Did our planet simply appear after a massive Big Bang, or are we the result of intelligent design?
As human beings, we've always been fascinated with the unknown, from space exploration to extraterrestrial life forms, religion, the occult, unknown historical facts to our very own planet and our origins as a species. Where did we come from? Who are we? What has been hidden from us?
On Revelations, we attempt to uncover and investigate some of the universe's biggest mysteries, as well as provide previously unknown details about some of the planet's most influential pop cultural icons and scientists. We'll even attempt to delve into the secret societies that possibly control everything from our finances, world governments, to some of the technological advancements we've made over the last century.
This is Revelations. The truth will be revealed. You must know. Yo, what's up, man? It's your boy, Gorilla Black, Norm Steele. Y'all definitely done tuned in, man, to the Revelation podcast, man. And today we have an exciting topic to really talk about. And for a lot of you, it's definitely going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. But nonetheless, I want all of the seekers of truth. I want people to, definitely hit the subscribe button. I want you to definitely leave your comments. We definitely want you guys to impart with us a lot of the knowledge and on this subject matter, some of the things that you guys were able to discover. And I mean, it's an interesting topic. And I think that, during the research of this, me and Steele, we definitely was able to uncover some profound things and delve into this. And, I thought that this would be a perfect thing for us to talk about today here on Revelations. And so definitely, man, we finna get into it, man. We're going to talk about today the Anunnaki. And, during my research, it was scary, some of the stuff that I discovered and some of the stuff that Steele brought to me. And he was just breaking me down on so many different levels. And we spoke about this, and I've been excited all week, man. So definitely, let's get into it, man. Steele, let's break this thing down.
And this is my disclaimer for the show. These aren't the views necessarily of me and Gorilla Black, but it's a subject that's interesting.
It definitely is.
And it has left many a scientist perplexed.
Yes, it has.
Because the Anunnaki, who were they as a people? I want you to break down for them on who the Anunnaki were.
The Anunnaki were spoke about in the Sumerian text, the Babylonian text, and also the Assyrian text. The Anunnaki were these beings that came from, like Steele just talked about, the planet Nibiru. And Nibiru, scientists have found that every 3,500 years, there's a red star or a dwarf star that comes into our galaxy every 3,500 years. And this planet is 6,500 times the size of Earth and 6 times the size of Jupiter with 11 moons. This is Nibiru, and in which where the Sumerians said that the Anunnaki came from. When they came here, there was a war there on their planet, whether it was nuclear or they had depleted their resources.
Possibly nuclear, because they were versed with nuclear weaponry.
Yes.
As we get into later on in the episode, we'll talk about that. They've used those weapons on the planet.
Absolutely. And they came here. After there was a war, there was one Anunnaki by the name of Anunna. And he was the king of the Anunnaki, and he fled and found refuge here on the planet Earth. And when he got here, he discovered that there was gold here on the planet. And this is the surprising thing that, when you look at all of the hominids and all of the people that were here, Neanderthal and all of these earlier life forms of first beginning man, we had this jump and advancement in understanding in time, in mathematics, in written form, in writing, in society. And it all began in Sumeria, one of the first ancient civilizations that had written form text. They had language. They were able to understand the concept of 360, the degrees in a circle, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. They had all of these advancements that were around them. These people pretty much had these powerful city-states developed, and they were astronomy and mathematics, and they understood medicine, and they were developed, and they understood how to calculate things. They had the use of brick and asphalt, and they had a legal system in place. So you have these ancient people that just have this advancement in understanding and knowledge. And
you mentioned dope. They had a legal system. They had a whole hierarchy for society.
Yes.
A template that's still used today. And please believe that the Anunnaki. Let me explain something to you. You mentioned the planet Nibiru. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, in the Bible, it speaks of New Jerusalem.
Right.
New Jerusalem, and a lot of people think of that being a city. It sounds like a spaceship. Sumerian text claims that in the beginning, human-like gods ruled over the earth. When they came to the earth, there was much work to be done. And these gods toiled the soil, digging to make it habitable and mined against the hard work. When the gods like men bore the work and suffered the toll of the gods was great, the work was heavy, the distress was much. Anu, the god of gods, agreed that their labor was too great. His son Enki, or Ea, proposed to create man to bear the labor, and so, with the help of his half-sister Ninki, he did. A god was put to death, and his body and blood was mixed with clay. From that material, the first human being was created, in likeness to the gods, which sounds similar to the biblical story of our origins, yet Sumerian text predates the biblical recount by thousands of years. This first man was created in Eden, a Sumerian word which means flat terrain. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Eden is mentioned as the Garden of the Gods, and is located somewhere in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Initially, human beings were unable to reproduce on their own, but were later modified with the help of Enki and Ninki. Thus, Adapa was created as a fully functional and independent human being. Adapa is Adam. This modification was done without the approval of Enki's brother Enlil, and a conflict between the gods began. Enlil became the adversary of man, and the Sumerian tablet mentions that men served gods and went through much hardship and suffering. The Bible's Elohim, who said, "Let us fashion the Adam in our image and after our likeness," were the gods of Sumer and Babylon, the Anunnaki who had come to earth from their planet Nibiru. The Adam, he wrote, was genetically engineered by adding Anunnaki genes to those of an existing hominid some 300,000 years ago. Then, according to the Bible, intermarriage took place. There were giants upon the earth who took Adam's female offspring as wives, giving birth to heroes of renown. With meticulous detail, these were the demigods of Sumerian and Babylonian lore, such as the famed Mesopotamian king Gilgamesh. Are we possible descendants of the Anunnaki? Was the Garden of Eden a laboratory where Enki, the Anunnaki's chief scientist, spliced the human genome with Anunnaki DNA? We may never fully know, but according to ancient texts, this is all very real.
It was mind-boggling for him. He wrote a paper in 1890 that shook the foundation of Christianity and Judaism to the core. And he would be tried for heresy and also be fired from Colgate University. And in this paper, what he laid out, he had begun to understand that the Sumerian, the Assyrian, and the Babylonians all talked about Noah's Ark, the flood. They talked about Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the followers, the fall. And these stories predated the Bible by 6,000 years or more in each one of these great civilizations. But it shouldn't have shook them to the core when you understand the root of Abraham and Sarah, where they came from. it says that Abraham and Sarah lived in Shadalim, which is a city in ancient Samaria. So you have to understand that they heard these stories as children, and wouldn't it, be common that they would carry these stories with them when they migrated out of that land and into, the land in which they ended up at, and these stories would end up being in the Bible. But I think the ironic thing about it is that those three civilizations that I mentioned, those stories weren't talking about God. They were talking about the Anunnaki. All three of those, the Assyrians, Sumerians, and Babylonians, were talking about the Anunnaki. And they spoke about them in the epics of Gilgamesh. Mm-hmm. And they said that they were the bringers of knowledge. And I think that at that time when he discovered this, it was earth-shattering. I mean, it was something that was so new, so different, that it shook everything to the foundation and the core and the beliefs of so many people, because these stories predated. And it weren't just those three civilizations. There's civilizations that spoke about the flood thousands and thousands of years in India and Native America before the Bible was wrote. But I think there was a watershed moment when Nathaniel Smith wrote this paper. And it's so crazy that after he was fired, he still ended up landing on his feet, because he was hired at Cornell University. Mm-hmm. And for 30 years, he studied cuneiform texts, and he began to decipher. And he worked almost the rest of his life tirelessly trying to decipher these tablets. And when he came and started to begin to understand these tablets, it broke down a culture of a people that was so sophisticated and so advanced and ahead of its time, that they understood where the planetary bodies lay. They understood where the planets were in the solar system. Now, it's so crazy, and I told you this earlier still, and it was profound the other night when we spoke about this topic. I've been living for 44 years, and I've never been able to stand in Compton, Inglewood, anywhere, and see Mars or Saturn or Jupiter.
No, but they managed to.
But they did. Without precise instruments, without precise tools, they knew where these planetary bodies were in their linear, or how they was organized and all of this. And this is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
They were very highly advanced. They were very highly advanced, and they knew the whole structure of the universe.
Yeah.
They understood that.
Yeah.
They understood that probably because they was floating around in a massive city.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you have to understand this. When the Anunnaki came here, scientists are still baffled how man had this great leap in understanding, how they were able to build their temples in 7 layers and 7 structures.
Things that they can't duplicate to this day.
Exactly. And they had, at that time, these people, they said that this knowledge was imparted to them by the Anunnaki. They were not talking about God, which is contrast to what the biblical text says, that it came from God. They weren't talking about God. They were talking about gods. Elohim, which we know of in the Bible, is plural. The Anunnaki said Elohim was the powerful ones, the shining ones. Wow, it's just mind-blowing.
Well, you know what I do? I want to check in right now with some sponsors real quick. But when we come back, I want to get into the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And they're like pretty much the creation of the Garden of Eden. We'll be right back. All right. Now, we talked about it last time. We said we were going to talk about the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
One of the things, we all know the story of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and the serpent, right?
Right.
The serpent is a symbol of divine wisdom and knowledge in gods and heroes. In the tablets, as it turns out, the serpent was Enki's emblem. That was Enki. Enki was the chief scientist.
The chief scientist.
Of all those people. You know, pretty much you could say he was the creator of the human race. Took part of Adam's rib, which was Adamu.
Adamu, which is so crazy that still say this because in the biblical text, it calls him Adam. Now remember, still just said Adamu. Again, that Sumerian story predated the Bible by thousands of years about Adamu. Go ahead.
Right, what?
The planet Nibiru from ancient Sumerian writings may be the same as the heavenly New Jerusalem described in the Bible's book of Revelation. Here are some similarities. In the Bible, the heavenly New Jerusalem is said to be about 1,500 by 1,500 miles in size and adorned as a bride for her husband. That would indicate that it has some visual splendor, as the streets are said to be paved in gold. It is said to be a dwelling place of God and his angels. In the ancient Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki, they are said to have come from Nibiru. According to our studies, the Anunaki may have used humans to mine for gold because they needed it for the atmosphere of their planet or a possible vessel. Could this be the heavenly New Jerusalem that is written about in Revelation? Will we possibly one day see the vessel in all its glory return to the planet? We can only wonder and speculate. But is it possible that the Anunnaki still walk among us in the form of presidents, world leaders, and other people of power?
See, this just rocks everything to the core because I always thought that the snake was Satan.
Right. And it's so crazy. Now think about this. And I want you guys, definitely chime in. Please hit the comments. I want you guys definitely to chime in. Think about this. They were in the Garden of Eden. And she seen that the tree of life bare these fruit, and they were beautiful. And the serpent said, go ahead and eat of them.
Which is Enki,
who
was going against the commands of his brothers.
His brothers. So think about this now. Now, that's crazy that you say that. Now, she said, no, for the Lord said that we shall surely die. And the serpent said to her, you surely shall not die. You shall have knowledge like us. Us. You shall have knowledge like us. And so she ate of the fruit and seen that it was pleasing, and she gave it to her husband, and they discovered their eyes were opened in that moment. They realized that they didn't have any clothes on. Now, I want you guys to think about what I'm finna say and what me and Steele are elaborating on. These gods had to be at conflict about our destination and who we were. Because why would God not want us to have the knowledge? Why would God not want us to know that we were naked? But the serpent says that you shall surely not die, but you shall have knowledge like us. And then the Lord said to them that they shall be banned from the Garden of Eden, and that she shall bear children, and that he shall toil the earth for their food. And it says that there were two cherubim posted at the gates of Eden with swords going back and forth. Now, it's crazy that all of these civilizations that Steele just spoke about the serpent. And these civilizations predated Christianity by thousands and thousands of years. And this is not just in ancient Mesopotamia. This is in Southeast Asia. This is in, the North Americas, all around the world. This is mind-blowing.
Yeah, going back to, the Garden of Eden, because a thing that has plagued scholars all over the world was, they have this garden.
Right.
How was a serpent able to infiltrate it, right?
Right.
See, God's, I said God, forgive me, but Enki's brother Enlil had ordered them not to touch the tree of knowledge and had threatened that if they ate the fruit, they would die. So let's mull over this a little bit, right? Enki explains to Eve, you would not die.
Yeah.
You eat this, you need to, you know. So Enki had fell in love with the human race.
Yes, he did.
Because he was like for
the chief scientist.
You know, he's the chief scientist. He created them. And not to be, now, I'm going to give you another disclaimer. These are not me and Black's words. These are, you know, these are scripts. These are ancient texts right there.
Ancient texts that wrote this down, and they had this in Chimeric form. Nathaniel Smith, who I mentioned earlier, when he discovered this, imagine how he felt. He was a devout Baptist preacher. And again, we want you guys, the Seekers of Truth, to get in the comments, talk about this. We're delving into this, the Anunnakis, and it's a revelation in itself because it's mind blowing.
And one thing about it, like with scholars, they never really get into. If you notice in the Bible, they're very vague about Eve and the serpent's conversation.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure that it wasn't just, hey, Eve, a snake rolled up on you and said, hey, eat this apple.
Right.
You know, that would have been a scary thing.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? So that serpent represented Enki's symbol. So how it says, we, us, and we get the Trinity. It seems like, now according to this, I'm not saying this, I don't want to, this is not dogma, we're not trying to commit no act of heresy. We pretty much put information that's been there for thousands of years, probably millions of years.
Yeah.
Because I think the earth is a lot older than what we think it is. This is what they say right here. So it kind of rocks the core. And I can see why Constantine and those guys in the Vatican, when Constantine was out chopping people's heads off for not claiming Christianity, I can see why they would be going through the Bible like this. Nope.
And the Council of Nicaea, they definitely wanted to redact a lot of the different things that would be put into the Bible. And just to add to what you just read, in the Sumerian text, Ninlil, wife of the leader, Enlil, asked the Council of Seven to create Eden. Mm-hmm. Eden, which sounds like the biblical text is Eden, the same as the Bible. And the seven are like the seven angels of the Bible as well, that came from the mountains, that came from heaven. You know, the Sumerians refer to Eden as the abode of the righteous, or, you know, the abode of the righteous. So the tree of life to the Sumerians was like the tree of knowledge that stood in the Garden of Eden, mm-hmm. and that it held the secrets of the shining ones, and was only told to the prophets and those who had, you know, the wherewithal to understand it. So, wow. Now, again, this is thousands of years before the biblical text. Yeah. Genesis uses two words for God, Elohim and Yahweh. And this was given to Moses in a time, almost in a millennium or a century of stories that, you know, existed. They were Elohim stories. Elohim is plural, and it means the powerful ones. Mm-hmm. So it could mean demon, it could mean angel, it could mean chieftain, it could mean land baron. And so we have to go back to the root of the word Elohim, which means, again, the powerful ones. And the Bible and the Sumerian stories line up. They're not just stories about God, but they were stories about the Anunaki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're about the Anunnaki. And, you know, the one thing, you know, I think about Adam and Eve. Mm-hmm. I think about them being these new creatures in this garden because, see, Adam, and this is another thing the Bible doesn't really go into, Adam was around before Eve. He was pretty much, you know, traveling and around. He was around for 40 days in the land before he got assigned to Eden, right? Exactly. Before he got assigned to Eden, right? So he goes back there and he has to, you know, now they telling them you have to call us Lord, because you got to remember at this point, a religion, a doctrine hasn't been established yet. So you're going to call us Lord and you're going to obey my rules. So you think about it, he's minded for gold. Right. Now he got a new job. He got to tend to the garden. They teach them agriculture and they being told to stay away from this tree.
There we go. And so to add to that, it's so crazy now. It said that the Lord brought to Adam all of the beasts of the field, and he seen that he had no partner, and that he put Adam in a deep sleep. And he opened his side. And when Adam woke, he seen woman. And he told woman, you are flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. But this is how is it that God made this oversight not to create man a partner?
You know what I believe, and this is just my personal theory with this. I think when they first came down, the whole purpose was just to mine for gold. You got to remember, they got to deplete the ozone layer that they need gold to complete. So, of course, they had women on their planet, because you got to remember the Anunnaki, they weren't some kind of big, it's not like a bunch of green monsters or lizard king. These are human beings.
Yeah.
These are human beings. They had women because they had sisters. You know, Enki and Enlil had sisters.
Right.
So, who also told themselves they were goddesses.
Exactly.
They claimed themselves to be goddesses. They gave themselves that title, right?
Exactly.
And they even made a council, the council of the gods. So you think about this. This is my theory, right? To answer your question. I truly believe that they wanted to be all males. Males are stronger.
Right.
And they can mine as much gold as they can. But you got to remember, Enki, him loving these people and giving them information like, man, you could eat that fruit. Ain't nothing going to happen to you.
Exactly.
They can tell you that because they don't want you to be as smart as them.
They
want to keep you stupid.
They have the knowledge like us.
Yeah, exactly.
Enki said the knowledge like us. The serpent said the knowledge like us.
Mm-hmm.
Elohim is plural, the powerful ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like what you're saying, and I think more than anything, these gods had a discrepancy amongst each other.
Oh, they had a big discrepancy that would lead to nuclear war eventually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's take a quick break, man.
Okay.
And we're going to come back right there. I'm going to tell you something that's going to rock your mind,
Okay.
all right? We're back and you tuned in to Revelations. Before we left off last time, we were talking about the Anunnaki in the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
Let's take it further. You know, these were human beings,
And
right?
the conflict between them.
Yeah, they did, which means they had traits that we have as human beings, which are vanity sometimes. Jealousy. Anger. You know, wrath.
Yeah.
So you got Enlil, his brother, they're telling Adamu and Eve, hey, don't mess with this tree. Mm-hmm. The brother come out, man, don't worry about what he's talking about, man. You know what? You eat as much fruit as you want to, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to remember, in the modern Bible, they represent that as Satan as being evil, mm-hmm. because they make it like it's you don't want to have this forbidden knowledge, because for the longest, they've been keeping us as a society, even today, stuck on stupid.
Right.
They don't want us to have information about who we are. You got to remember, too, all this took place over in Africa.
So I want you guys to understand exactly. This is a great question, and I'm going to ask this question, and I'm asking this question to all of the viewers that's out there. Was our interpretation of who the serpent was backwards? Is it backwards? Now think about it.
Not saying we Satanists, nothing to that degree.
Now think about it now. There was an oversight to create man a partner. When Eve partook of the fruit, the serpent told her, you will have knowledge like us. Now, why would God not want us to know that we were naked or not want us to have the knowledge? It's because that this species who came here, could it be that the species who came here to the planet didn't want our eyes to be open, didn't want us to know that we didn't have clothes on, didn't want us to have this knowledge? So there seems to be a big discrepancy here. Jesus, he said, even in the text, and I think I wrote this down. Jesus, it's so crazy when we look at where Jesus stood on this. Jesus was saying things like, Moses, say this, but I say these. In reality, he was not endorsing Mosaic law. What did Jesus think of the Elohim stories? Jesus said, There's a moment where he said, all that came before me were thieves and robbers. All they do is rob, kill, and destroy. And that's a pretty good story of Elohim, the Anunnaki. And what they did when they came here, they colonized our planet, governed over our ancestors. And Jesus set himself up in total contrast to the people who treated humanity that way. Did Jesus believe Yahweh was God? This is another good question. And there's a moment when Jesus was encouraging people to connect to the source and people to address the source as Father and to provide, that would provide for them. There's a moment in Luke and in Matthew's, the gospel, where he asked, which of you fathers would, if your child asked for food, would give a snake? If you children ask for bread, would you give them serpents? So now, if who of you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who asked? And the other gospel says, how much more will your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask? Now, I'm getting here. I know I'm getting somewhere with this. So he says he got to the source. Go to the source and expect good things. That the source is not like the wicked father who would give serpents to his children when they're hungry and asking for food. I think what he was talking about is about a story that happened with the children of Israel where they were wandering in the desert. And there was a moment that the people of Israel, they were starving in the desert. So when they came to Moses, they said, can you please call Yahweh to provide us with some food? And instead, they were sent down serpents, fiery serpents, to go in and attack the people. It's a horrible story, but the people were starving, their children were starving, and they asked for food. And Yahweh says, you're not going to get food. You're going to get serpents, snakes, dragons. So this is a contrast when you see this story that Jesus is talking about. Was he talking about when Moses sent the serpents in? I think that he understood who the Elohim were. The Elohim, the powerful ones. He knew that they were the Anunaki. He knew this. I believe this.
Do you think it's a possibility that Jesus came from that same bloodline?
You know, I think that he understood he was connected to the source. Mm-hmm. The source that was even greater than
because they do talk about the Anunnaki. They don't go too much about them if they have a religion, but they do acknowledge that there is a grand creator.
A grand creator, the source.
That is unseen.
Exactly. And it was talked about, you know, Saul knew that the people of Rome didn't have any concept of, you know, God. So Saul has this wonderful scripture where he refers to the source of all things living, the source of the water, the source. He knew that he couldn't go in depth with them. It was like trying to give a baby a piece of steak. Mm-hmm. So he had to, and it's beautiful because he says the source. And it says that Jesus spoke to God as God was his Father. I think Jesus was distancing himself away from the Elohim, which were the powerful ones, which were the Anunaki, because he understood.
After the flood, you know, after they had this great flood, which Enki warned Noah about,
right?
You know, humanity multiplied.
Right.
It multiplied after that, and that's when they started building these massive structures
all around
and the cities. And the cities were all based around, you know, these royal temples, because the Anunnaki pretty much said, we're gods now.
Exactly.
We want to be gods. We want to be worshipped. So they, you know,
Exactly.
had vanity and, you know, vain. That's why you had these kings who committed these great feats back then. They were the kings.
They were.
You know, they were the kings. They were performing sorcery, which look at sorcery, which I pretty much figured out with some science, you know what I mean? A lot of science behind it and everything, right?
Right.
So, what the Earthlings know about all these other guys and their family links, as well as their family feuds, ushering competition, strife, and wars between cities. One of the guys, Anu, he exerted a global sovereignty. He is well known by all the Earthlings because magnificent feasts are given whenever he comes on a visit with his wife, Antu. And then that's when they institutionalized kingdoms and faiths. At one cornerstone meeting with the Assembly of Gods, the Anunaki decided that they were too lofty for humanity, meaning they now want to be regarded as venerated as gods, but they also want to be more distant from the Earthlings, and they institute kingship in their own wording. They decide to lower kingship from the heaven to earth and to give to the Earthlings the tiara and the crown. So that's where the tiara and the crown come from, right?
Exactly.
They simultaneously institute priesthood and lines of priests. The king will be an intermediary, forwarding the decrees and commands to the population and maintaining law and order in the cities.
Right.
This decree ushers in the time of the institutionalized religion.
Right.
With only the numbered lords of the royal family granted the right to build their own temples and be venerated on the condition that they had received the hard-won permission from Enlil and the assembly, even the Nurten. They mention the mysterious creator of all.
Wow.
Sometimes in the tablets, they mention creator of all, referring to a mysterious, powerful entity, maybe one that had created the whole universe. We have an example when a radioactive cloud from blast over Sinai and 5 cities in the ancient Canaan drifted and erased all life in Sumer, human, animal, and vegetable, apart from Babylonia. You remember when in the Bible it mentions, I forget the scripture, but when Babylon got destroyed, and they say, his wife turned around, turned into a pillar of salt.
Right.
That sounds like a nuclear blast to me.
Exactly.
It was so powerful that where you stand, you just turn into a, pillar of dust.
Right.
Pillar of salt.
And this is just interesting, some of the stuff that you just discussed. And here, again, on Revelations, we really want to delve into some things. And I definitely want you guys to go into the comment section. And I definitely want you, we're here with this discussion, and definitely we want you a part of it, because during this, discovery and some of the things that we came about and some of the stuff that I'm talking about, some of the stuff that Steele is talking about, when you break it down, Anunaki means those who came from heaven. What's even more interesting is that the Assyrians' first king, his name was Gilgamesh. His name appears in one of the most important Mesopotamia artifacts, the Sumerian King's List. When you look at the King's List, it goes back 24,300 years. The timeline, 24,510 years, 3 months, and 3.5 days. Now, that precision is surprising, because now when you look at the Sumerians, you got to think, again, I spoke to you earlier, they created 360 degrees in a circle, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. When you divide 24,510 years, 3 months, 3 days, when you look at the dynasties, it broke up 23 kings. That's an average age of dynasty, 1,000 years a dynasty. So let's go back to the biblical text. It says Methuselah lived 800 and something years on the earth. And then as you see the progression, some of them were 700 years, some of them were 600 years. It says that the dynasty before the great floods, when the Anunaki, those who came from heaven, was here on earth, there's 6 to 36. The reign of each one of these dynasties were 30,000 years. So earlier you were talking about how these people literally lived almost 100,000 years. And archaeologists, when they sat down and they broke down this, it couldn't be just by happenstance that they understood how long these extraterrestrials reigned here on Earth, and then they created Gilgamesh. They said that he was the first hybrid, half Anunnaki, half human.
Well, you got to look at that bloodline. That bloodline includes Gilgamesh. It includes Horus. It includes a whole bunch of powerful beings.
Right.
A whole bunch of powerful beings. A whole bunch of the heroes. That we see in the Bible. You know what I mean?
Right.
They possibly shared in that bloodline, right? So you think about this now. Whoever the creator of all is, they're scared of him.
Right.
They respect him because, while they were doing this stuff with us down here, right? We can see this indirectly in the way that they all stress that the beings they need, the workers, already exist so that they will not create souls of beings, but just optimize the genome, the tree and essence of life, of already existing souls. They are just perfecting or fashioning a being in the sense of engineering or upgrading him. A being who already has a soul, that of a hominid woman, and on whom they will graft their own genetic imprint by binding or merging the two genomes. In our thesis text, after Enki had proposed to the assembly to create a Lulu, which is a primitive worker, a human, the gods thus assembled pondered how to bring forth a being intelligent enough to understand and carry out order, says Enki. The creature whose name you utter, it exists. We just have to bind upon it the image of the gods. In other words, as the Sumerian text explains it, God and man shall be bound to a unity brought together. The term Lulu, the gay of Lulu, means man, both in Akkadian and in Sumerian, but it also means a mixed being.
A mixed being.
So that means that all of us, even up in the day, may be a part of our ancestry,
Right.
And, of course, there has to be a creative force, right? Since they know well that to emerge to self-consciousness themselves in the world already lush with life, animal and vegetable, they knew they hadn't created the world they found themselves to live on. And since they do not venerate a personal creator through rituals and in specific temples, we have to infer that the creator of all, while seemingly personalizes a person's name and function, is nevertheless an abstract concept and not an article of faith as would be an unseen God. And we know they had extremely developed science and technology. Their civilization was at risk.
Right.
They had a serious problem with a dwindling atmosphere, right?
Right.
So they were in trouble when they came down here, right?
Right.
And they made a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And we hear about it, right? Like we hear about when God destroyed, it looks like in the Bible that God is a God of wrath.
Right.
But those were the Anunnaki. A lot of these things that happened on the planet was going down through them.
So it's so crazy that you say the Great Flood. Now, this Great Flood was mentioned in all of these ancient cultures. And it's said that around that time, scientists predict that Nibiru came in close proximity to the earth. And when it did, it melted the ice caps. I mean, literally, it caused havoc here on earth. And it's the Ndigi, they were in a revolt at the time. The Ndigi were another hominid species that were developed enough to take these orders and mine this gold. And Neil's little brother had created it. He was the chief scientist here. And they revolted against the Anunnaki. And so the Anunnaki and Lil wanted to destroy all of the humans. And again, like you said, they had to have some type of conflict because the little brother said, hey, you guys need to prepare an ark, bring some of the animals on here, bring some of the life forms. Was it that they captured the DNA of these animals, or did they take the physical animals? Did they put them on something? But something cataclysmic happened here on the planet, and it's documented in all of these ancient civilizations.
It's interesting that you say that, right? There was a celestial battle, right? In this battle, the planets of our solar system, when the Bureau, the Nomad planet, approached our solar system and cut through it, one of its moons collided with a large outer planet called Tiamat. A big chunk of Tiamat was pulverized into small debris and formed the asteroid belt that's known as the Hammer Bracelet. Still around today. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And the larger part was swung through the sky toward the sun, becoming Earth with its new orbit nearer to the sun.
When you look at all of these ancient civilizations, they all say that these gods came here and changed the atmosphere. In Africa, some of the ancient civilizations in Mesopotamia, the Native America, all of them say that something came here and changed the atmosphere. Is it that the Anunnaki came here and terraformed the earth to what we know now as the earth? Think about it. He just said this in what he just read. Nibiru came in close proximity to the earth. And this is a fact. Scientists know that every 3,500 years, Nibiru comes into our solar system. And actually, it orbits counterclockwise. It orbits the opposite direction from the way that our planet's in our solar system. But what's even more profound, what's even more exciting to me, and it just blew my mind, is that these people were imparted this knowledge and information and wrote it in this cuneiform text thousands and thousands of years. This isn't my beliefs. This isn't just Steele's beliefs. This was written in their ancient text, and it wasn't just one civilization.
No,
it was not just one civilization. And this is the question. You got to think about it. It talked about those humanoids and those hominids that were living here on the planet. And scientists are still trying to figure out this great bound and leap of information that was imparted to the modern Homo sapien. How is it that we go from scurrying the earth to actually writing cuneiform text, speaking language, usage of rock, steel, asphalt, understanding how time. You got to think, even on some of these tablets, they have the planets in order exactly in their bodies. Mm-hmm. How is it that these people knew where those planets were at? How was it that they were able to build the Tower of Babel? Was it that they were posted there watching celestial bodies in the orbit?
Well, you have to think about it, though. That was us on Earth trying to build the Tower of Babel, right?
Right.
Because they had imparted that knowledge in us. You got to remember, by this time they had hybrids. Mm-hmm. So people had been trained, select groups of people, select people had actually been able to go back to Nibiru, right, to the home planet. One of those guys came back down here and knew so much and thought it was so beautiful, he wanted to go back. So they started building. Babel was actually the tower. That tower was actually going to be a spaceship.
Right.
There was going to be a spaceship to get back. And they saw this and got angry. That's when they mixed our languages up.
Exactly.
And that's what it talks about in the Bible.
Right. There was a conflict amongst the Anunnaki. Mm-hmm. There was some who wanted us to advance, and there was others who didn't want us to advance.
Well, it's funny you say that. Look at this. Even in the Epic of Gilgamesh, mm-hmm, you read that book, and it was written when the Earth was in very primitive stages, and that's a very profound story. Like, have you ever read the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I got a little taste of it, but not in depth.
But you think about it, this was written a long time ago, right? And it's, it has the mention of a plant of youth. When this king of Eric, 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, he began his quest on a long journey in search of immortality.
Wow.
He wanted to be immortal, but he was part Anunnaki, right?
Right.
He said 2/3 divine and 1/3 human.
Okay.
He finally got a chance to meet his ancestor. I don't know how to pronounce it, so if I'm pronouncing it wrong, forgive me. But not that she's, the Zadora Noah of the deluge, who was granted immortality by Enlil and who discloses the secret of the gods, that is, the real story of the deluge, how the gods had decided to keep it a secret and let humanity be erased from Earth. They wanted to keep that, this tree of life, tree of knowledge, they wanted to keep that stuff so exclusive to them that his whole thing was, let's just get rid of them.
Right.
Let's get rid of them. But his brother was always one step ahead, and he told, Noah, hey man, this is about to go down. Just like that, just like if I know the Fed's about to hit your house pretty much, and I send you a text, hey man, them boys is coming. You feel what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Grab you some stacks and get on out the back door.
And just imagine now, think about it. Now, he prepared him for this great deluge, this great flood, told him to take some of the animals, two of each animal, put them on there. And they were on this actual barge. And just imagine, the gods were at conflict with themselves of how they wanted to deal with humanity. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to destroy humanity, if they wanted to destroy humans. And it brings into question everything that we previously knew been taught about the Bible, about a lot of these religions. When we begin to talk about God, we start thinking religion.
Yeah, and that's what God tells us to see. If we read the Bible, man, the Bible is not a fake piece of information, first of all.
Right.
I very much, and this is my disclaimer, I believe in God. I'm a follower of God.
Right.
I don't belong to a specific doctrine. I'm non-denominational, but they even acknowledge it, the grand creator.
Yeah, they
the grand creator, and they were scared of him, right? And I won't even say that they were our creator, so to speak. I think they kind of just gave us an upgrade.
Yeah, we got to upgrade.
We got to upgrade. I think the way God intended us to live, I think God kind of intended us to just be here, live life. Because back then we were living to be hundreds of years old.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Thousands of years
and,
old.
And that's when sin corrupted us or whatever. Maybe Inky did do something wrong when he had us eat from the tree of knowledge. Because that's when we started thinking scandalous like them.
Exactly.
And another possibility it could be the Anunaki could be the fallen angels. Mm. They could be the fallen angels. Some of them weren't necessarily evil. Some of them were better than others, it seems,
Right. So you have to understand and see that these Anunnakis, they brought this knowledge here on Earth. Scientists, again, they're trying to figure out, where did this great leap and transformation of information happen at? And the stories in the Bible actually happened. It's just that there's documents and texts in Sumerian texts that they existed long before the Bible was created. And again, man, I want you guys to go into the comment section and definitely give us some feedback. Maybe you guys have a piece of the puzzle that we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. Definitely, I want all of the seekers of truth to seek the truth and try to, because when we started discussing this, it was really, really scary for myself to see some of the stuff that I stumbled
on. A lot of stuff. And I came very close to not wanting to do this episode because I never wanted to be misinterpreted. Right. That I'm up here expounding on my personal beliefs.
Right.
But this is something that's there. It's a part of history that we actually need to look at and take into account to. Right. That we don't understand everything. And I do know that, the day God do decide to take me home, me and him gonna have a long conversation. Exactly. So I can say, hey man, so what's going on with this and what's going on with that?
I think, man, just us being open-minded and us looking at the possibilities and us, not narrowing and becoming cynical and foolish to believe that we just came out of nowhere and understood how to count, knew the measurements of time, understood how to write, understood how to read and how to communicate, hunt, forage, all of those things, out of nowhere. There's something that definitely took place, and that's what we're doing here. We're here to reveal, and we want to reveal certain things that was previously hidden, and we definitely want you guys to reveal in the comments, subscribe. We want y'all to go in here and definitely open up the conversation, and that's what we're here to do. And the Anunnaki was something that when myself and Steele wanted to sit down and talk about, there's a lot of different, topics about Anunnaki, but I had never delved into it to this point and was enlightened. And the things that I discovered on this journey was mind-boggling. with the Assyrian text and with the Babylonian text and with, Gilgamesh and all of these things. And so it's so much more for us to understand that we still don't understand.
Yeah, we still understand, like, how most of Africa, like in the Sahara Desert, it spans for thousands of miles. All of that at one time was lush with life.
Lush.
I'm talking about grass. It wasn't a desert. It was grass, life, trees. I just picture this really beautiful tropical paradise with waters, lakes, and streams. But check this out. And Leo had a strong will to erase humanity, right? Mm-hmm. Even before getting to his grand final, genocidal plan using the deluge, and Leo had tried again and again for a very long time to erase the earth of all human beings. Beyond the original text, many tablets similar in content were found in Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian, and Canaanite languages, which allowed the scholars to put together a near complete account. In fact, the text starts right at the beginning when Anunaki toiling in the gold mines in their revolt. Then it states that when the earthlings had multiplied and doing their workload, they were filling the nights of summer with the noise and loud expressions of their love making. And that was impeding in Leo from sleeping. So they create these human beings and they in there getting their bed on, doing their thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
He just didn't like us.
He didn't like us.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
The land extended, the people multiplied in the land like wild bulls they lay. He got disturbed by their congregations. The God Enlil heard their pronouncements and said to the great gods, oppressive had become the pronouncements of mankind. That's when we start getting this stuff, man. And that goes right back to Babylon. He was so mad at the sin and stuff like that he just blew everything up, right?
Right, exactly.
And Noah, the biological son, was all his life the protege of Enki.
Right.
He was his boy. Enki then tried something in there, protects the people to a certain point. Part of the tablet was damaged, but Enlil soon realized that he hadn't been able to reduce the earthling population, and he gets furious again. Then he comes up with a second plan, which is to erase humanity by starving the people.
Right.
So that's how you get the desert now.
Right.
He pretty much killed all the vegetation off, and he was so mad at us that he kind of cut his nose off despite his face.
Right.
Because, see, what happened was the people eventually realized that these people wasn't gods. They wasn't immortal. And eventually start killing them off. Right.
Again, it talks about in those Sumerian texts that the Anunaki revolted for 40 years. For 40 years they revolted, and they were able to finally squelch the revolt. At first they thought that the Anunaki was a different deity of the Anunnaki. And when they really start to understand that the Anunaki were a slave labored race that was, laborers in the gold mines. And what's so crazy is that these ancient gold mines and shafts are in Africa and all types of places throughout the planet where they were there mining this gold. Wow. It's mind blowing because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, it was written thousands and thousands of years before the Quran, before the Bible. And these are actual accounts of what these people documented in these texts. And for scholars and archaeologists, when they were able to discover this, for me, I'm mind blown. I know it was mind blowing for them.
You want to blow your mind some more? When most people think of the deluge, we've been taught in the Bible that Noah built and constructed this boat, right?
Right.
That's not true, man. What Enki did, right, is he hooked Noah up. Noah and them pretty much went on orbit around the earth, right? He didn't, they say in the Bible that he gathered, chickens, cows, and, stuff like that. Man, that would have been chaos on the boat.
Chaos.
Been chaos on the boat. No DNA samples. DNA samples were there.
DNA samples. That's what I mean.
And, they say 40 days and 40 nights. It was more, a little bit longer than that. That's why the earth, has the amount of water it has, right? He orbited around the earth. Mm-hmm. They were, put in spaceships and they orbited around the earth.
They had to because it said that the earth was flooded. So it's no way that they could have survived that amount of time unless it was a vessel. And he had to hook them up. He had to take them and put them in some type of spacecraft or some, again, a lot of the technology that they had then differ from the technology that we have now. And it may have been even more advanced than anything that we previously know. When you look at all of the architecture, when you look at that, the pyramids in Giza, when you're looking at all of the lines that's in Peru, when you're looking at all of these ancient civilizations and the things that were accomplished and built, and the civilizations and the understanding that they had for time and mathematics, it wasn't like they just came out of the jungle and understood that they would create these elaborate temples in the middle of the jungle that would be aligned with the stars. Someone had to impart them this information. Someone had to give them this knowledge.
Exactly. And you think about it, and I keep going back to this deluge because that's my personal feeling of it, that they were either in orbit on the Earth or he either built Noah a submarine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But either way,
Some-
that's way ahead of time. And you know, we see that the Vatican,
Right.
you know, we found out that the Vatican, they hold a lot of articles to history.
And archives there.
And archives
they've
there.
had
So
for thousands and thousands of years.
now just imagine the turmoil that would cause if it came up and said, man, this is BS right here. This is BS. That's true right there, but it happened this way. Can you imagine, man, the institute, the business that has become the church,
Right.
the business of religion, a multi-billion dollar tax-free business.
A business. You got to realize the Vatican is a city. It is not a religion. The Vatican is a city that has its own currency, has its own police. This is a city. It's not a Catholic religion. This is a city. This is its own government, this own everything that's on this plot of land. You have to realize that they are the biggest landowners on the earth.
It is, man.
So imagine this type of information. Again, think about Nathaniel Smith. When this man came out of nowhere still and shook the core of Judaism and Christianity with these Qumeric texts. So imagine if they were to come out of those vaults with some of the artifacts and the understanding of things that they have accumulated over the thousands of years of procession of their reign over religion and brought to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
This would be mind-blowing. So you got to think about it. Scientists say that there are 100 billion trillion possible planets in the universe. 100 billion trillion. Listen to that number of possible planets in the actual universe. Isn't it possible that there could be another life form? Is it that these ancient people, the Sumerians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians, is it possible that they had been encountered by some life form that they say are the people from heaven, they called the powerful ones, gave them this knowledge, that held this powerful tree that they wanted to keep sacred in this garden?
We are going to go on into all that, man, on these shows, because I do believe, like, you have the people they call the lizard people.
Right.
Which I think is probably another just form of symbolism.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think ultimately, man, I believe God to be the creator of the universe. And who's to say that we the only planet to have people on there? You know what I mean? I think there are other planets. You know, one thing I want to get into before we finish, man, you know, we have to talk about, we touched on the Tower of Babel briefly, right? You know, between the deluge, which was 11,000 BCE, and the Tower of Babel crisis, 3450 BCE, 2 wars were fought between Enlil's children and Enki's children. You got to remember, they hated each other so much that their children are still fighting today. Hence, you see Islam, because Enlil's crest looked a lot like the symbol of Islam, right?
Right.
And then we talked about the crest the Incas people bore, which looks like the cross.
Cross, exactly.
And you
see that in those.
Jerusalem,
Exactly.
Israel, you know, still at conflict, right?
So now you see some of the things that are being written. It not only happened in Samaria, it not only happened in Assyria, it also happened in Babylon. We know that these Anunnaki were spoke about in multiple ways with different names throughout the world. And some of the stuff that we've delved into today, it definitely opens up a lot more questions than actual answers. And you have to think these people left a written documentation of what actually happened. They weren't talking about God the way that the Bible says that these stories were about God. These were the powerful ones. And here on Revelations, definitely, I want you guys to definitely chime in to this discussion with myself and with Steele. And definitely, we're going to continue to delve into more mysterious things and different artifacts. And we're going to definitely, you know, sit down and try to come to an understanding of a lot of things that we don't have understanding on. And so, you know, I definitely want you guys to tune in next week, man. This is your boy, Gorilla BLACK. It's been exciting with my man, Norm Steele.
As a matter of fact, Black, before we let them go, we're going to start our lives pretty soon. And this is something that we want you all to participate in. These lives are going to be discussions. Because I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there that knows way more on this subject than me and you do.
More.
We invite you to come on. We invite you to come to these sessions and let's chop it up. Let's just start learning the truth about who we are as a people.
Exactly.
Let's start learning the truth and let's debunk some stuff too. For some stuff, some BS, let's debunk it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of you out there, if we're able to stumble up on what we've stumbled up on, and you see some of the things that we've spoken on today, I believe a lot of you, seekers of truth, people who want to understand and get to the bottom of a lot of things, I think that you guys have a lot to offer to the conversation. Please feel free. And definitely, like Steele said, we're definitely going to be doing that live. So we want you guys to chime in. We want to hear your opinion. We want to hear some of the things that you guys have stumbled up on. And we just want to, man, just keep learning and keep learning. And I think we can learn together, man. And I think this is where we all begin to get an understanding as a whole, as humanity, as, you know, a people. So definitely, man, when we do these lives, chime in, give us your feedback. Maybe you guys discovered something that we may have not discovered or understood about. And definitely, we want y'all definitely to jump in there with us, man.
And remember this, knowledge is power. Do the research, do some reading, study up. We out of here.
We out of here. Peace. Revelations.
Did our planet simply appear after a massive Big Bang, or are we the result of intelligent design?
As human beings, we've always been fascinated with the unknown. From space exploration to extraterrestrial life forms, religion, the occult, unknown historical facts to our very own planet and our origins as a species. Where did we come from? Who are we? What has been hidden from us?
On Revelations, we attempt to uncover and investigate some of the universe's biggest mysteries, as well as provide previously unknown details about some of the planet's most influential pop cultural icons and scientists. We'll even attempt to delve into the secret societies that possibly control everything from our finances, world governments, and some of the technological advancements we've made over the last century.
This is Revelations. The truth will be revealed. You must know.